It even contributes to better heart rate variability, a direct measure of how adaptable and stress-resilient your body is. It gets even more interesting. Repeated prayer over time appears to influence the default mode network, a system in the brain associated with introspection and self-reflection. People who regularly pray or meditate show reduced activity in the parts of this network linked to excessive self-focus or rumination. That means less overthinking, less self-criticism, and less paralysis in the face of uncertainty. You're not just shifting your focus during prayer. You're actually changing how your brain reflects on life, even after the prayer ends. Think about the implications of this. Every prayer, whether full of faith or uncertainty, is a neurological investment. You're reshaping your mind to interpret life differently, to pause instead of panic, to breathe instead of break. And even when your circumstances don't change immediately, the way you interact with them does. That's the beginning of transformation. There's also the element of repetition. Doing something over and over again, especially with deliberate intention, creates neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to change and adapt. Every time you pray, you are reinforcing that adaptation. You are telling your brain, this is where we focus. This is what matters. This is the pattern I choose to follow. Over weeks, months, and years, that choice becomes embedded in your neurobiology. And that's when something powerful happens. Peace is no longer just something you ask for. It becomes a state you know how to enter. Some might say that prayer is passive, but in truth, it's one of the most active things you can do. It requires discipline, repetition, mental strength, and, in many ways, surrender. But that surrender isn't weakness. It's actually the letting go of reactive neural circuits and the embracing of more integrated, stable patterns. You are quite literally becoming mentally tougher through spiritual practice. And it's not about perfection. It's about presence. Some days your prayer will feel powerful. Some days it will feel dry. But every time you show up, you're continuing to train your brain to find clarity in the fog, focus in the noise, and purpose in the waiting. Over time, your biology begins to match your belief. Not just theoretically, but neurologically. That is the unseen miracle of prayer. And it is very, very real. Certainly, here's the expanded version of Key Point No, 2 Faith Rewires Your Perception of Pain, written in a motivational and science-informed tone, with no subheadings or keywords, approximately 700 words. Pain is inevitable. Whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, every human being will face it. But how we interpret pain, how we relate to it, can either break us or build us. And the deciding factor often lies in faith. Not faith in the sense of wishful thinking or denial of suffering, but the kind of faith that gives meaning to pain, the kind that allows you to sit in the fire and still believe something good is being forged within you. That kind of belief changes everything. When you have faith that your pain is not random, your brain processes it differently. Pain by itself is just a signal. It's your nervous system firing off alarms. But once your mind assigns meaning to that signal, once it gives it context, the experience of that pain changes. This is not just philosophical. It's biological. People who endure hardship with a sense of meaning show different neurological patterns than those who see suffering as meaningless. The brain's pain centers become less reactive. The emotional centers begin to regulate. Even physical recovery improves. Faith doesn't remove pain, but it can reduce its grip. What's more fascinating is how faith can shift your anticipation of pain. The human brain is always predicting. It doesn't just react to what's happening. It constantly forecasts what might happen next. This predictive mechanism is crucial to survival, but it can also trap us in fear. However, when you carry faith, genuine belief that what you're going through has purpose, it alters your predictions. You're less likely to spiral into worst-case scenarios. Your body becomes less tense. Your breath steadies, your decision-making improves. You're able to move forward not because everything feels safe, but because you trust there is something bigger than the pain. When pain is stripped of meaning, it feels heavier. It turns into a weight you carry with no direction. But when you believe there's a reason, even if you don't yet see it, pain transforms. It starts to become a teacher rather than a tormentor. And something fascinating happens here. Your tolerance for adversity increases. You begin to endure not with resignation, but with purpose. You begin to find energy in the very thing that once exhausted you. You discover that the pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to reveal you. But there's also something uniquely human about transcending pain through faith. Animals respond to discomfort with instinct, fight, flight, or freeze. But humans, with our complex brains and layered consciousness, can choose to respond with meaning. This is one of the highest functions of the human mind, the ability to suffer and to grow, and faith enables that ability. It doesn't guarantee you'll avoid suffering. In fact, it often leads you into deeper places of self-confrontation, but it does promise that the suffering can be turned into something more, something rich, something redemptive. The people who grow through pain are rarely the ones who had the easiest lives. They're the ones who held on to belief when everything else was falling apart. Their circumstances didn't improve immediately, but their relationship with pain changed. They stopped seeing it as punishment. They stopped seeing it as the end. They started to view it as a process, brutal maybe, but one that could give birth to something stronger, something clearer, something more grounded. Faith is what makes pain endurable, not because it dulls it, but because it reframes it. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start wondering, what is this shaping in me? And that simple shift, that reframing is enough to activate different parts of your brain. It moves you out of helplessness and into possibility. You begin to walk differently. You speak differently. Show up with a quiet strength that didn't exist before. The truth is, pain will visit everyone. No one escapes it, but not everyone will grow from it. That's where faith comes in. It's the lens through which pain is redefined. It's the internal decision to believe there is purpose even when there is no proof. It's what allows you to keep going when your body is tired, your heart is broken, and your mind is spinning. And over time, as you continue to walk with that faith, your brain adapts, your story deepens, and the pain that once threatened to take you out becomes part of the foundation that builds you up. Certainly. Here's an expanded version of Key Point Noe 3 Hope is a neurobiological strategy in a motivational, neuroscience-rooted tone without subheadings or keywords. Approximately 700 words. Hope is often misunderstood. To many, it sounds like a soft emotional concept, something reserved for the weak or the desperate. But in reality, hope is far more than just a feeling. It is a powerful biological mechanism that plays a central role in human resilience. It isn't naive optimism. It is a deeply wired function of the human brain that allows us to survive, adapt, and rebuild in the face of adversity. And one of the most potent sources of hope is every time you pray and ask for help, for strength, or for change, you're not just engaging in a spiritual ritual. You're stimulating specific systems in your brain. One of the key players in this process is dopamine. For stillness activates strength, written in an inspirational neuroscience grounded style, without subheadings or keywords, and approximately 700 words. In a world that constantly demands movement, noise, and reaction, stillness is often mistaken for weakness. People assume that if you're not visibly doing something, speaking out, pushing forward, making moves, then you must be falling behind. But stillness is not the absence of action. It is a strategic pause. It is a deliberate state in which the body and mind recalibrate, and it is in that space that strength is often born. Stillness achieved through prayer is especially powerful. When a person becomes still in prayer, something deep happens beneath the surface. On the outside, it may seem like nothing is happening, but internally, a complex and restorative process begins to unfold. The nervous system begins to shift from a state of high alert to a place of regulation. The sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the fight or flight response, starts to quiet. In its place, the parasympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for rest, digestion, recovery, takes the lead. This isn't about becoming passive. It's about becoming grounded. Every time you step into stillness with intention, through silence, through prayer, through conscious breathing, you give your body a break from the relentless urgency of survival mode. That break is not a luxury. It is essential. It allows the mind to regroup, the heart to steady, and the body to repair. You may not notice it right away, but inside your internal systems are finding rhythm again. Your heart rate becomes more balanced. Your blood pressure lowers. Your brainwaves shift from the chaotic beta frequencies into calmer alpha and theta patterns. In this state, you're not weakened, you're recovering. And it is in recovery that strength begins to form. People who cultivate stillness through prayer often discover that they become more emotionally resilient, not less, because instead of reacting to every signal of stress, they create space between stimulus and response. That space allows for clarity. It gives you the ability to observe your own reactions without being consumed by them. You can feel the fear and choose courage. You can feel the pressure and respond with peace. This isn't denial. It's the discipline of self-mastery that only comes when you train your nervous system to remain rooted in calm while the world around you may be chaotic. Stillness also allows for listening. In constant motion, it's easy to drown in the noise of your own assumptions. But when you become still, truly still, you begin to hear what you've been too busy to notice. Sometimes it's the whisper of your own intuition. Sometimes it's clarity about something you've been wrestling with. And sometimes it's the quiet reassurance that even though you can't see the way forward, you're being guided. That kind of awareness doesn't come from effort. It comes from surrender, not giving up, but yielding to a deeper rhythm that can only be accessed in the quiet. What many don't realize is that the ability to be still takes incredible strength. To be still when everything inside you wants to fight, flee, or panic. That is strength. To remain calm in the face of uncertainty. To sit in silence without filling it with worry or noise. That is strength. It's the kind of strength that builds endurance. It's the kind of strength that allows you to face pain without being crushed by it. And it's cultivated through practice. Every moment of prayerful stillness becomes a rep in the gym of the soul. Over time, those who practice this stillness find themselves responding to life differently. Their first reaction isn't panic, it's presence. They are less likely to speak recklessly, less likely to act impulsively. They gain the ability to pause and assess, to step back and see the bigger picture. And that shift makes all the difference. Because strength isn't just about power. It's about control. Not control over others, but over yourself, your thoughts, your words, your energy. Stillness is where you begin to take that control back. And it doesn't require hours or perfection. A single moment of intentional quiet can start the process. A minute of deep breathing. A silent prayer whispered in the middle of chaos. These moments compound. They train your system to stop feeding on urgency and start operating from stability. That is a radical act of strength in a distracted world. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, remember that your power may not be found in pushing harder. It may be found in pausing, in sitting still long enough to reconnect with your center. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's where the real strength begins. And once you learn how to access that place, you'll carry it with you into every battle, every storm, every test. Silent, still, and unshakably strong. So here's the expanded version of Key Point Number 5, you are building mental and spiritual endurance in a motivational and neuroscience-informed tone, without any subheadings or keywords, approximately 700 words. Endurance isn't just about how long you can keep going. It's about who you become while you keep going. Most people associate endurance with physical stamina, with how long the body can tolerate stress or effort. But there's another kind of endurance that runs deeper, one that forms in the unseen places of the mind and spirit. And that kind of endurance is built in the quiet, repetitive, often unseen moments when you choose to keep praying, even when nothing seems to change. There's something profoundly powerful about showing up daily to something that doesn't give you instant feedback. When you pray and don't get an immediate answer, when you hope and don't see quick results, it tests a part of you that words can't describe. But that testing isn't a failure. It's a training ground. Every time you continue in prayer when it's hard, when you feel dry, when the silence is loud, you're building layers of mental toughness. It's a kind of quiet strength that doesn't scream for attention, but makes you unbreakable from the inside out. The brain learns through repetition. That's how habits are formed. It doesn't care whether you feel inspired. It registers what you do consistently. And the more consistently you return to a place of prayer, of inner grounding, the more your mind begins to adapt to that rhythm. It starts to default toward patience instead of panic, toward trust instead of control. It rewires how you handle stress, how you process fear, and how you deal with uncertainty. That's endurance, not just surviving the wait, but transforming through it. What's fascinating is that this kind of endurance is quiet. It doesn't always look like you're making progress, but underneath the surface, you're changing. You're expanding your capacity to sit with discomfort without being ruled by it. You're learning to hold steady in the storm, without losing yourself. And over time, what once overwhelmed you starts to feel manageable. You develop a new threshold. You start to realize that the thing you thought would break you is actually becoming the thing that builds you. That's because the strength you're building isn't reactive, it's anchored. It's anchored. You're not just bouncing from emotion to emotion. You're rooted, and that root grows deeper every time you choose prayer over panic, stillness over chaos, persistence over escape. It doesn't mean you don't feel fear or doubt. It means you've trained yourself not to surrender to it. And that's a form of power that can't be taken from you. One of the most important parts of endurance is your ability to stay faithful in the process. The process is often slow. It's often confusing. But the ones who grow the most are the ones who commit to showing up, even when they don't understand everything. That consistent decision to keep praying, to keep believing, is like a muscle being strengthened over and over again. Eventually, that muscle becomes so strong that you don't just withstand the pressure, you thrive under it. There are people who walk through seasons of silence, of waiting, of pain, and they emerge with wisdom and peace that cannot be explained by circumstance. That's because while the world was watching for outcomes, they were developing endurance. They were becoming people who can lead, who can support, who can carry others because they know what it's like to carry weight in the dark and not give up. That kind of person is rare, but they exist, and they're formed in the quiet trenches of repeated perseverance. This type of endurance also gives you something that circumstances cannot guarantee: stability. Life will always be unpredictable. Storms will come, loss will come, delays will frustrate. But the person who has built spiritual and mental endurance through consistent prayer learns how to remain centered, no matter what happens outside of them. They stop being ruled by emotion and start being led by principle. They gain the ability to choose their response, to guard their peace, and to act with patience instead of impulse. In the end, endurance is one of the most valuable traits you can develop. Not because it eliminates hardship, but because it gives you strength that lasts. It's the quiet fire that keeps burning when the spotlight is off. It's the invisible force that holds you up when everything around you is shaking. And the path to it is simple, though not easy. Keep showing up, keep praying, keep believing. Even when nothing changes, you're changing. Wank. Even when you feel stuck, you're growing stronger. Every moment you choose to stay faithful in the unseen, you're building a strength the world cannot touch. And when the time comes, that strength will speak louder than anything you could ever say.